Okay, game. Sorry, I think this left on earlier. Alright, game. Saan na tayo? Magandang tanghali. Ako po si Trixie Cruz-Angeles for Luminous. Gusto ko lang malaman kung okay na ba ang audio natin. Pa-check lang po ng audio kung okay. Do you hear me? Hello? Okay, sige. Dito naka-on yung aking devices. Ulit. Alright, magandang tanghali. I wanted to talk about Ka Eric kasi marami naman pong nag-update na tungkol sa bagyo. Continuously naman nagmo-monitor tayo. So, medyo tahimik pa ang Metro Manila for the moment. So, habang meron tayong internet connection, di sana mapag-usapan natin itong mga revelasyon din ni Ka Eric. We won't deal with all of them kasi marami yan eh. Do you really, ano yun? Do you really strike as an occasional archaeologist because of your house decor? What do you mean strike? Dito, I don't understand what you're trying to say. Okay, alright, si Ka Eric, napanood ko po yung kanyang, what do you call this? Yung kanyang revelations doon sa parang press conference niya that was broadcast by PNA. So, maganda yung ilang mga sinabi niya, but I would like to concentrate on a few things first. One of them was itong sinasabi niya na tungkol sa front organizations. He was very careful to point out na ang mga involved with the NPA ay yung liderato. So, he was careful to point, halimbawa, dito sa pagdating sa Gabriela and other organizations, he was also very careful to point out na hindi lahat ng miyembro ng Gabriela or nitong mga organisasyon na ito ay bahagi or nakikilahok o miyembro o nakikipaglaban sa CPP-NPA for the CPP-NPA-NDF. Okay, bakit mahalaga yan? As an insider, kilala niya kung sino yung mga nakikilahok. In fact, nagbabanggit pa nga siya ng names. 'Di ba? Hindi ko na po uulitin yung mga pangalan, pero sige. For instance, sino ba ang binanggit niya? Si Sir Obet de Castro. A lot of the names that he had mentioned, makikilala po natin personally. We've met. I mean, we're not really close or anything like that. But there's a tendency to meet a lot of these people kapag at one point or another nag-aaktivista kayo. So, sinasabi din ni Ka Eric, he was very careful to make distinctions na hindi necessarily activism. So, meron siyang examples ng pagka-aktivista na okay naman. So, ang sinasabi niya, these organizations, even the student organizations, they take up causes. And these causes are worthy causes. Ang ibig sabihin nun, walang masama dun sa pagtutol halimbawa sa tuition fee increase, sa pagtutol sa, let's say, fuel price increases, mga ganyan, sa pagtutol dun sa no putol policy, halimbawa ng ERC, which we'll discuss at another time. Pero yung mga ganyan, yung pagtutol sa no putol policy is requires some discussion. Pero meron siyang mga binanggit na mga examples. And para sa akin, mahalaga ito and it makes him even more credible for me kasi nga, ibig sabihin nito, na iintindihan niya na kailangan nuanced yung usapan dito. Hindi pwedeng sabihin natin lahat ng miyembro ng Gabriela ay NPA. Hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na, in fact, he was careful to point out na liderato yung may involvement dito sa Gabriela, sa NPA. Bakit? Kasi among other things, no, ang pag-identify sa kanila as members of the NPA automatically is an imputation that they're committing a crime. Dahil ang NPA, alam naman po natin, whether mag-apply ang ATL or not. They're in the act of committing the crime of rebellion. Okay, so pag sinabi mong NPA itong taong to, the imputation is criminal yan. Okay, so he was also careful to say na red tagging was an invention of their group, which I don't doubt. Kasi the original expression is red baiting. At ito nga ay nanggaling dun sa 1950s McCarthyist era when being a communist by itself was already a crime. Ngayon, hindi na po ganon. And it's very interesting that he pointed this out na red tagging kasi up to now, nagre-rely pa rin yung mga umaangal na masama yung pagre-red tag sa kanila. Masama daw yung mga ganun kasi ano yung inaangal ninyo? It's not a crime to be red. It's not a crime to be a communist. And as a matter of fact, nakilahok nga ang komunismo sa tinatawag natin free marketplace of ideas. Kumbaga, if you believe that communism is a viable and a good form of government, bakit hindi ninyo isinusulong yan? Or bakit kulang yung pagsulong ninyo at tila nahihiya pa kayo dun sa pagtatag sa inyo bilang komunista? Is it because nga na we have a tendency to think na lahat ng komunista ay necessarily criminals? No, of course not. We know that very well. So, bakit significant din yung ibang mga revelasyon ni Ka Eric? Ang sinasabi din niya is that ginagamit ng mga organisasyon, lalo-lalo na yung mga tinatawag nating makabayan bloc, ang pagkuha, ginagamit nila, kumukuha sila ng government funds to continue to provide for the underground movement of which is, yun na nga, the CPP, NPA, NDF. And they wage war or revolution against the government. Tapos, binibigyan natin sila ng pera. Pera ng ating mga taxpayers, natin, pera ng OFWs that are remitted here and then eventually remitted to the government in the form of excise tax, VAT, etc. And income taxes later on, down the line. So, yung sinasabi ni Ka Eric is significant. He blows the legit organizations as conduits for funding of the CPP, NPA, NDF. Okay. So, mahalaga yan because this is not, it wasn't just Ka Eric na lumabas. Siyempre, lumabas din yung ibang mga witnesses pero hindi pa sila nagsasalita. Once magsalita, katulad ni Ka Eric, once magsalita yung taong yon, then maliwanag na ma-identify din sila. Dali. Ano ko. Dun sa mga, sorry sa maangal sa audio, wala na po akong magagawa kasi settings po talaga nitong setup ko. Kung gusto niyo padala niyo po na mas malakas na mic, hindi na ako maiinis sa inyo pagka nagre-reklamo kayo ng audio ko. So, ano pa? So, Kyle comes forward bilang isang witness. So ngayon, anong kailangan gawin ng kabila? Kailangan gawin nila is to attack his credibility. So ano yung mga lumabas tungkol dun sa credibilidad niya? Unang-una, hindi naman siya si Eric Almendras daw. His name is Jeffrey Celis. Okay? Inamin naman niya, yes, siya daw si Jeffrey Celis. Hindi talaga siya taga-UP, graduate siya sa Visayas, and all that. Nakakasira ba ng credibility niya yon? Hindi. We'll explain that later. Sinabi na, konektado daw ito sa isang di umano'y, konektado siya sa isang di umano'y drug lord dito sa Iloilo. At does this destroy his credibility? Well, we'll discuss that later. So, ano yung ginagawa ngayon? At dapat ini-expect natin. I-expect natin na itong mga gustong mag-attack ng credibility niya, yung mga taong tinatawag natin na nasa kaliwa o nasa bahagi na katunggali natin. In short, yung kalaban natin dito, kailangan sabihin nila na hindi siya credible. Kasi that's the only way they're going to attack him. Bakit? Hindi pa nila alam yung mga detalye ng kanyang testimony. Yun yung maganda dito, ha? Paalala niyo po yan. hindi pa siya nagkikwento in detail. Ang sinasabi niya is, ito kasama yan sa underground. Ito kasama yan sa underground. Ah, 'di ba? So, ito yung ito yung mga taong to involved sila sa underground. Tumatawid yan. Minsan nandito sila sa legal fronts, minsan nandito sila sa ilalim nakikipagbarilan. Meron nga siyang binibiro pa, well, not binibiro, pero more like inaasar na isang miyembro na sinasabi niya na, oh, ikaw, hindi ka sumasama sa bundok, sa tinatawag nila sa kanayunan, parati ka nandito sa Metro Manila, pero panay ang recruit mo ng mga kabataan. Masakit yun ha, masakit yung akusasyon na yun. Kasi ang sinasabi ni Ka Eric dito, ikaw, recruit ka lang ng recruit. Ang nire-recruit mo, pinapadala ninyo sa bundok. Ikaw nga, hindi mo kaya sa bundok eh. Parang ganun yung sinasabi niya. Which tells me that he knows these people. He knows the operations. Alam niya kung sino yung nakikipagbarilan, kilalang kilala niya, at alam niya din kung sino yung mga nagtatago dito sa city. Alam niya kung sino yung mga humaharap at nagko-conduct ng propaganda warfare, at kilala din niya kung sino yung actually nakikipagbarilan. So, alam niya, you know what's scary? Yung hindi niya sinasabi, mas nakakatakot yun para dun sa kabila. Hindi pa niya sinasabi ng buong buo yung mga sources ng financing. Bakit? Kasi may mga korporasyon na nagbibigay. Itong mga korporasyon ba, pinilit? O ginagamit din nila, nagbabayad sila para mag-conduct ng, let's say, additional propaganda war. Mag-conduct ng, how do you call this? Parang maging trolls para sa kanila. Di ba? Yung iniintay ko yung mga ganyan. And what he's doing is nagpapatikim siya. Pinapakita niya, ito alam ko ilang ito. And he tells them only enough. Okay? Only enough para marinig ng kapila yung sinasabi niyang, eto alam ko to. Hindi pa niya binibigay yung detalye because yung mga detalye na yan, para sa hukuman yan, para sa preliminary investigation yan. Itong mga patikim na ito yung bahagi ng propaganda war. Then, on our side naman. Diba? So, mahalaga ha, pakikinggan ninyo yung sinasabi ni Ka Eric at saka yung hindi niya sinasabi pa. Okay, ano pa? Ngayon, yung mga paratang sa kanya, yung mga accusation sa kanya, hindi naman ikaw si Jeffrey Almendras, hindi naman ikaw si Eric Almendras, ikaw si Jeffrey Celis. Okay, sabi niya, yes, totoo yun. Siyempre, kailangan magtago ako ng pangalan. Noong una, ginagamit niya yung name na Jeffrey Almendras, ginagamit niya yung, Eric Almendras, at ginagamit niya itong cover. So, it's a cover. So, lumabas siya as a cover. Kunwari, I am Eric, pero yung totoo niyan is he is Jeffrey. Nakasira ba ito sa credibility niya? Hindi. Kasi pag nagtestigo siya, later on, he will be giving his full name, his real name, or his alias, it doesn't matter. Ang importante sa isang witness, nandun ka, na-experience mo yan, nakita mo with your own eyes, narinig mo with your own ears, and naramdaman mo with your own skin. Kumbaga, yan ang requirement na maging isang witness under the rules of court. Okay? So, nasa nasa YouTube yung mga interviews ni Ka Eric. Please, can you turn on the fan? Thank you. So, minute na eh. Hindi pa umuulan dito. So, yun. Do I believe him? Yes, I believe him. If merong paratang sa kanya, if there are things that they're going to be saying against him, if there are things that they're going to be accusing him of, then ako magdadalawang isip. Bakit, alam niyo palang criminal itong taong to, hindi niyo siya nire-report. Alam niyo palang involved, kunwari, sa drugs itong taong ito, hindi niyo siya nire-report. Bakit? Bakit ngayon niyo siya sisiraan? Ngayon pa. Diba? So, yun po yung isang akusasyon. Ang sinasabi ay, di umano'y kasama dun sa drug trade. At naakusahan na nga ni Pangulo. Ang defense niya is, I went undercover. Asset ako. Ginamit ako para sa drug war na yan. And the fact that he is walking around and not being arrested says to me a big thing. Ginagamit nga siya. Well, he's cooperating with the government authorities kasi kung hindi naman siya cooperating or even nag-state witness lang siya, dapat nakakulong siya. Diba? Inaamin niya, oh, involved ako dyan, pero police asset ako. Ginamit ako sa operasyon na yan. So, yung sinasabi ko is, well, yeah, still works for me. It doesn't affect his credibility kasi what is the credibility of a witness? That he himself experienced what the circumstances of the crime. O so kung nandun siya, nakipagbarilan siya, he witnessed everything, meaning he saw everything, he heard everything, he spoke, he was part of it, he was contributory in the entire operation, that makes him credible. He was involved. Okay? Hindi lang siya yung basta na sumisilip galing sa labas, nakikita na, oh, ito nakikita ko nagbabarilan. Hindi. Kilala niya yung mga taong inaakusahan niya. Kilala niya yung mga taong ina-identify niya bilang mga miyembro ng CPP, NPA, NDF. Okay. Yes, please take note. Sinabi ni, but I also want to give you a disclosure na bago pa lumabas si Ka Eric ay nakausap ko na po siya. Okay, so nakausap ko na, tanong ko nga siya, bakit ikaw na-recruit? Kasi at the time sinasabi pa niya na taga-UP siya. At di umano'y kasama ko siya sa UP Diliman. Well, turns out hindi nga. Pero I don't doubt that he knew. Kasi alam niya din kilala niya yung mga tao sa UP So, does he talk like a UPD student? Probably not. But it doesn't matter to me whether graduate ka sa Visayas o graduate ka sa Diliman. Para sa akin, credibility involves whether or not you know the circumstances. Nandun ka ba? Ina-identify na nga. Ito yung pagkakamali ng kabila. Sinasabi, si Jeffrey Celis yan So, ibig sabihin, makilala nila. They just confirmed his identity. They just confirmed that this person is somebody that they know. And they just confirmed that because they know each other, this person has enough information about them. So, malaking bagay yan. Ang pagkakamali nila, sa pagnanais nila na siraan itong taong to, inamin nila, nakilala nila. Alam mo kung hindi nila kilala, mas masakit yun sa credibility. Mas masakit yun. Kasi parang sasabihin ko, hindi ka daw kilala nitong mga to Hindi ka daw nakikita nitong mga to Paano ka nakakatestigo niyan? Ang nangyari is, umaamin sila. Diba? So, sabi ni Mike Del Rosario, his inclusion in the drug list have no bearing to his credibility pagdating sa kanyang nalalaman sa mga CPP, NPA, NDF bilang isang former cadre himself. Agree. Kasi ano nga yung, how do you determine the credibility of the witness if he himself was the one who was there? He saw it himself, he heard it himself. Ano ang factor ng credibility pagdating sa pagtitestigo o pagsasaksi? It's an attack. Okay? Ibig sabihin, yung mga tumutunggali, yung mga hindi sumasang-ayon sa iyong testigo, gagamitin nila yon para ma-diminish yung impact ng iyong testigo. Pero yung requirement nga lang para maging saksi ay ikaw mismo ang nakasense ng pangyayari. With the use of your own senses, you affirm the facts involved. Okay? So, ma-affirm niya yung facts involved kasi nakita niya, narinig niya, siya mismo nakilahok doon sa krimen mismo. So, para sa akin, parang, di ba, parang yung mga yung mga drug lord lang na sumasaksi against Laila de Lima. Nakakasakit ba ng credibility nila na drug lord sila? Of course not. Kasi nga, ibig sabihin, sila mismo nakita nila. Sila mismo naging bahagi ng operasyon na yon, and therefore they saw with their own eyes, heard with their own ears, sensed with their own skin. Kung may pagtitikim pa ba dyan, and I don't mean that in the sexual sense, but kung may pagtitikim na involved dyan, para sabihin niya, kunwari, mapait ito, maano to, sila mismo yung nag-sense nun. Okay? That's what po, personal knowledge. Hindi po ito hearsay na, ay, narinig ko nga na si ganito. O, sinabi ni person X sa akin na si person Y ay ganon. Hearsay po yon. Ito, siya mismo. Siya mismo ang nakakalam. So, ngayon, ang tanong, if you know so much, bakit hindi kayo nagfa-file ng kaso? Girl, Sino may sabing kailangan kong i-file ngayon? Oh, sino may sabing kailangan asin ngayon na ngayon na ngayon na? 'Di ba? Hindi ko mata, yung ebidensya na ako. Pa-file ko na 'to. Hindi gaya ng kabila. Ang tagal-tagal na lumabas yung balita na ang Jeffrey Celis ay involved sa droga. Kilala naman pala nila si Jeffrey Celis. Hindi nila ni-report. O ilang taon na yun? 2? 3 taon? Since lumabas yung balita na yon. Bakit ngayon lang nila sinasabi na, involved yan sa droga, kilala namin yan. Kilala nyo pala, ba't di nyo pinakulong? Diba? Unlike now, sinasabi ni Kael, ikaw, so and so, kilala kita, nagkikita tayo dun sa ikaw, Mr. O, hindi ka man lang napupunta sa kanayunan, pero kung makarecruit ka, parang hinahagis mo sila doon. Pasarap ka dito sa, syudad. Mga ganyan. Kasi alam niya. Diba? So, isa pang reason why he can be a very good, one good reason why he can be a very good witness, qualified siya as a witness kasi may personal knowledge siya. Ngayon, is he a good witness? Yes. Kasi, articulate siya. At naaalala niya. He can identify names, places, faces, occasions. He is aware of the operations. We don't expect him to know every single detail about it. Hindi masasira ang credibility niya kung merong 1 or 2 things or even 10 things that he doesn't know about an organization as old, more than 50 years old, as the CPP, NPA, NDF. Diba? In fact, dito pa makikita credible yung tao. Hindi parating tama, hindi perfect yung testimony. Kasi kung perfect yung testimony, magdududa talaga ako. Hindi pwedeng perfect. Okay? Ngayon, I'd like to bring up yung mga balikan ko lang itong sinasabi niya na may mga issues that are being taken up by even the front organizations that are legitimate issues. At ito yung panawagan ko sa inyo. Hindi komot nagsalita yung kabila, ibig sabihin, mali yung sinasabi nila. So, kung kunwari sabihin nila, no to tuition fee increase, at hindi nga naman talaga justified yung tuition fee increase, there's no reason why we can't take up that cause also. Hindi naman natin kailangan kasangga sila or anything like that. So, pagkadating dun sa mga issues, we need to be able to cross party lines, so to speak. Ibig sabihin, kung masama talaga. Halimbawa, ayaw natin kay Duque, okay lang kung ayaw din nila kay Duque, pero parang malamya sila tungkol kay Duque pala. Okay. Ngayon, sabi ni Vivian Viella, General Parlade has enough evidence dahil dun sa mga gadgets at documents na nakuha nila sa mga raids na ginagawa sa mga kuta ng CPP, NPA, NDF. Ganito po kasi yon. Pagka ang pinag-uusapan natin ng ebidensya, kailangan sinasabi nyo din, ebidensya for what? Okay, for whom? Kasi pagka sinabi natin, ebidensya in a criminal case, kailangan identified yung crime at identified natin yung tao na gumawa. Hindi pwedeng yun, ang daming ebidensya. Pero yung ebidensya na yun is evidence only that CPP, NPA, NDF are conducting terroristic activities. Pero hindi siya enough to identify a particular person as guilty of the violation of the anti-terrorism law. Okay? So, when we talk about evidence, we always have to be able to say kung ano yan. Evidence of what? Evidence against whom? Hindi pwede na sabihin natin, ang dami-dami namang ebidensya, bakit hindi gumagalaw ang hukuman? Kasi nga, wala pang identifications. So, yun po ang ginagawa ng ating AFP. Kaya pag sinasabi ng kabila, bakit hindi kayo mag-file ng kaso, meron pala kayong ebidensya ng ganito, teka muna. Diba? Magki-case build up pa kami or nasa case build up stage na kami. Pero may morally persuaded na kami dito sa taong ito. Ngayon, kung sa tingin niyo libel yung sinasabi namin, by all means, mag-file kayo ng libel. By all means, mag-file kayo ng administrative case. Pero meron ba kayong nakikita na gano'n? Wai talaga. Libel ba yung red tagging? Libel ba na tawagin kang komunista? Of course not. Tignan ko. Sabi ni John Caridel Nasito, anong protection from the government ang pwedeng i-avail ni Eric knowing that mere testifying against some powerful people endangers his life and if meron, his family. sinabi naman niya na handa siya yung time na yun. Pero, of course, the AFP and whoever is holding him, like the DOJ, kung magtetestigo siya, will make sure na protektado siya. Alam natin na mabigat yung sinasagot niya na responsibility at obligasyon. Responsibility at obligasyon para dito sa ating na dinadala niyang mga kaso. Okay? So, dahil mabigat yung dala niya, syempre, nare-recognize naman ng ating AFP yung need to protect him. Hindi naman po sila baguhan sa mga ganitong klaseng operation. Okay. Now, pero tama kayo, for sure, delikado ang buhay ni Ka Eric kasi sinasabi na nga natin matagal na ang CPP, NPA, NDF, kapag tumiwalag ka sa kanila, kapag umalis ka, lalong-lalo na yung mga umalis at hindi nagpaalam, kapag tumistigo ka laban sa ibang mga kasamahan nila, ay sigurado yon papapatay kayo. Especially yung mga may matitinding paratang, yung mga may matitinding ebidensya, matitinding testigo laban dito sa mga CPP, NPA, members ng CPP, NPA, NDF. Okay? So, ulitin ko po, bakit mahalaga din yung testimony ni Ka Eric at bakit credible siya? Kasi nuanced. Hindi siya black and white. Hindi yung lahat ng mga to kailangan makulong. Hindi. Alam niya yung differences. Alam niya yung difference between Gabriela's members and Gabriela's leadership. Alam niya yung difference ng mga miyembro lang ng Gabriela or yung mga officers ng Gabriela nanggaling sa underground at minsan tumatawid, bumabalik-balik. Okay? Yung mga tumatawid, yung mga pumupunta sa underground, yung mga nakikipagbarilan dito sa ating AFP, mga nangingidnap ng mga civilians, nag-ambush ng mga civilians at ng mga sundalo natin, he makes the difference. Okay? And then he also identifies na may difference kapag may pinaglalaban na causes itong mga organisasyon nila. And those causes are good. Those causes are valid criticism, undertake also valid criticism of administrations. Not just this one, but administrations. So, ihihiwalay natin. Yung valid criticism, yung valid advocacy, they can still undertake valid advocacy and there is nothing wrong with that, and in fact, pwede nating suportahan yung mga yon. Equal rights for women, of course, by all means, sino bang may ayaw? Although, ang tingin ko, angat talaga ang babae sa mga karapatan at minsan sa dealings with women and sometimes yung mga archaic language and all of that, in many cases, kulang pa rin. Masama ba yon? Hindi. And just because Gabriela stands up for women's rights doesn't mean we stop fighting for women's rights kasi yung nangungunang sumusulong ng karapatang pambabae, hindi natin gusto. Okay? Pero, pagka yung mga tao, not the organization itself, pero yung mga tao na nag-i-involve sa sarili nila, pinapasukan nila yung mga issues na nakikipagbarilan, nangingidnap and all of that, or naghahanap ng pera para suportahan yung underground, nagbibigay ng pera, nagbibigay ng indispensable aid para dito sa mga to, that is a crime and we can call them out. Okay? So, mahalaga yan is to make a distinction because Ka Eric made that distinction. Hindi siya wholesale nagkukondina ng isang buong organisasyon, kinukondina niya yung mga kriminal dun sa organisasyon na yun. Hindi siya wholesale nagkukondina ng mga causes ng organisasyon na yun. Sinasabi pa niya na, ito, importante ito. Ito, importante yung mga ganitong causes. So, he makes a distinction. And he has a very good reason for why he had to undertake a different personality. He had to use a different name, say that he was from UP. He admits to being part of the drug trade as a government asset. Walang problema dun sa mga yan. Does it affect his credibility? Uulitin ko po. The credibility of the witness depends on his qualification. A witness is qualified by the fact that he has personal knowledge. How does he have personal knowledge? His own senses told him so. He saw with his own eyes, heard with his own ears, and sensed with sensed with the other senses he has available. So, pag siniraan ko ba, pag sinabi ko kay Ka Eric, ikaw Ka Eric, mamamatay. Okay. So, hindi ka credible. Of course not. Di ba? As a matter of fact, para sa akin, pag sinasabi mo sa akin, combatant ka para sa NPA, kung hindi ka nakapatay, magdududa ako sa'yo. Were you really a combatant for the NPA? Bakit hindi ka nakapatay? Duwag ka? Bakit hindi ka nakapatay? Hindi ka kasama sa operasyon? Kung hindi ka kasama sa operasyon, how did you know this for a fact? Hindi personal yung knowledge mo. Kinuwento lang ng isang tao sa'yo. Ako nakipagwarilan ako, 2 official na napatay ko. Do you know that of your own personal knowledge? Hindi. Kasi kinuwento lang sa'yo. Hindi ikaw mismo yung nakakita. Natanong ni Jean Racelis, hindi pa deserve ni Ka Eric ang Witness Protection Program. Kailan ibibigay yon? Kasi kung credible naman siya maging witness, sayang kung mapatay lang siya. Ang tingin ko, hindi naman po siguro tanga ang AFP na hindi nila maiisip yon. You have to weigh that also. Once mag-witness protection siya, ito turn over siya to the DOJ. Ibig sabihin, dapat nandiyan na hinahanda na yung kaso. Kung ngayon, ginagamit natin siya para sa propaganda war, it won't be that easy when he's in the witness protection program. Sa ngayon, may sariling programa ang AFP at sarili nilang palakad para maprotektahan si Ka Eric. Hindi ko isi-second guess yan. Hindi ako mag-a-assume na mas marunong ako kaysa dun sa mga taong may hawak sa kanya, na matagal nang may hawak sa kanya. At tignan nyo, ngayon na lang siya lumitaw, ngayon na lang siya nagsasalita sa publiko, pero matagal-tagal na rin siyang hawak. Okay? So, kung ngayon buhay pa siya, siguro naman kung pabaya yung AFP o kung sino man ang ka-coordinate niya tungkol dito, hindi naman po sila pawaldi-waldi o tatanga-tanga tungkol dito. Ito magandang tanong. Tinatanong ni Ma'am Emma de Castro, paano po maliligtas ang mga kabataan na na-recruit na ng CPP-NPA, nakakaawa sila? Okay. May nakita akong discussion or post actually ng isang ina. Bata pa to, ang anak niya 2 years old. Sinasabi niya, hindi ko maintindihan itong mga magulang na naghahanap sa mga anak nila, na parang sinasabi nila na hindi sila pwede na sumali diyan sa mga CPP sa cause-oriented groups. Okay, cause-oriented groups pa yung mga binabanggit o kaya sa mga ganito sa Gabriela Youth, yung mga ganyan. Kumbaga, kung mahal mo yung anak mo at tama yung pagpapalaki mo, kahit sumali sila sa iba, pwede kasi sila ng sarili nilang opinion at sarili nilang political beliefs. On its face, tama siya. Tama siya kasi pag adult na, pag over 18 na yung anak mo, sa totoo lang, sarili na niyang buhay yan. Na siya. Kumbaga, the law presumes na meron ng discernment yung tao. Capable na of giving informed consent yung taong yun. Now, magbalik tanaw tayo. Naaalala nyo? I just want to point this out. Naalala ninyo, about 2 years ago, under fire yung Juvenile Delinquency Act. Ang sinasabi natin, nakikita ko itong mga bata at mga pakalat-kalat dun sa kalye, nagsisira ng kotse, mga ganyan. We have to punish them as adults. Dapat ikulong yung mga yan, na bilang mga adults, kasi alam naman nila yung ginagawa nila mali. 15 years old, 14 years old, ganun yung iniisip natin. Ganon ang iniisip natin. Ngayon na bumaliktad na tayo. Ngayon sinasabi natin, kahit naman 18 yan, bata pa yun eh. Kailangan pa namin, kailangan pa nila yung gabay ng ating mga magulang. Ang ability natin to discern isn't fully formed until you're 21 or even as late as 25. And that is true. So yan, this is just the opportunity I'm taking to say, I told you so. That's why our law distinguishes. Kapag you're below 18, the presumption is you're not yet capable of giving decisions that are adult in nature, that are, how do you call this? That are informed or made with discernment. O ngayon may magtatanong yan, bakit ina-assume natin na yung age to give consent to sex is over 12? Wait, hindi niya yata nabasa yung Anti-Child Abuse Act. Kasi rape, statutory rape, with or without consent, below 12 or 12 and below. Pagka higher than that, it's called child abuse, up to below 18. Okay? So, rape pa rin. Kasi, pero it's not exactly called rape, it's called child abuse. Okay? Kasi, nangyayari na dalawa yung menor de edad, nagkaroon silang pagtatalik. Ang tanong ngayon, may criminal liability ba yung isang bata? Kung consented yan, pero below 18 sila, Yun po ang nagiging issue. Kaya hindi natin parating sinasabi na rape yun. Okay? Oh. Ngayon, ibig sabihin nito, kailangan natin isaayos sa ulo natin ano ba talaga ang gusto natin tungkol sa mga anak natin. Naghahabol tayo sa mga bata na over 18 na at sinasabi natin na hindi informed yung consent nila kasi na brainwash sila, nadala sila sa bundok. Pero at the same time, gusto ninyong magpakulong ng 15 years old dahil yung pakalat-kalat sa kalye. Diba? Nakikita nyo na yung problema dun sa sa ating mga batas na ang bilis-bilis natin mag-judge pagdating sa mga bata, pero hindi natin na-take into consideration yung buong batas. Yung mga sinasabi ninyo, mangkikoy law. Sige, gusto ninyo, hindi sila capable of making decisions of making decisions even if they're over 18, pero willing tayong ipakulong sila? Ganun ba yon? Yung mga tipong wala pa silang ability to give consent to sex pero may ability na sila to commit crimes at pakukulong natin sila. Sabihin natin wala pa kayong ability to make contracts pero pakukulong natin sila. Do you see the problem here? I was waiting for this opportunity matagal na kasi ako lang yata yung nagdi-defend ng juvenile delinquency law, but not the way Kiko wrote it. Actually, yung amendment pa inamendahan yun. At kulang pa rin yung pag-aamenda nun. But what we're talking about here is where do we draw the line at giving consent? Ngayon, kung gusto ninyo na hindi pa talaga capable yung mga bata, pagka ni-recruit sila, may habol tayo sila, hanggang 21, ilagay natin yung age of consent. Pwede naman yan by legislation. Pero, di ba, you can't draft them. You can't also put them in jail. If you're going to say they're incapable of joining the CPP-NPA or giving consent to joining the CPP-NPA and all of that, ibig sabihin you're also not giving consent to putting these people in jail because they have no capability to make adult discernments. Okay? So, isip ulit. These decisions, itong mga taking sides natin, they have repercussions. Okay? Okay? So, paano natin ngayon aagawin yung mga bata? Uli. If you will notice, si Ma'am Isay, Lucena, nanay ni AJ, natalo siya sa habeas corpus. Bakit? Kasi over 18 na si AJ. Paano natin hahabulin pagka ganon? Pero recruitment starts when they are still below 18. Si AJ mismo, na-recruit siya at 16 years old. So that is where we stop it. Pero, if we're going to do that, we are also going to have to recognize na wala pang criminal liability at that age, at 16. Okay? Kailangan aminin natin yon. We cannot have it both ways. Na meron tayong pinapakulong pero sinasabi natin hindi sila capable of making decisions. Once we decide that at 16 they're not capable of making decisions na, sige, sasali ako sa CPP, NPA, NDF, then we also agree that we cannot put them in jail and that they should be treated as juvenile delinquents. Yung mga nagre-reklamo, ang daming butas ng batas natin, sabi ni Kit Aratia, hindi nga Kasi hindi rin, it isn't the law. It's those of us who support or are against the lawmakers. Yun, naapektuhan din sila sometimes, hindi not all the time. Doon sa mga hinanaing natin, sige, gusto ninyo, taasan natin yung age of consent para sa sex? No problem with that. But, paano yun? Would it be fair to put kids in jail? They're not old enough to have sex. So, they should not be able to be old enough to make decisions also and understand the repercussions of their actions and answer for them as an adult for criminal liability. Diba? Ikukulong mo as an adult pero iaminin nyo hindi siya capable of making these decisions. So, hindi yan butas. It's just plain reason. It's just plain logic. Diba? Sabi ni Teresa Barro, and I disagree, unless abogado po kayo at masasabi mo sa akin na binasa mo po lahat ng batas. Sabi niya, karamihan sa batas sa Pilipinas, maraming butas para kasing hindi pinag-iisipan mabuti ng mga gumawa. Ang dami kasing dapat ganito. Hindi po. It doesn't just work that way. Sometimes we have good laws and there are other times we have terrible laws. And there's times also when the laws were made to protect certain classes of people. And I agree with you on that one. Pero yung mga butas na yan, hindi po necessarily because of bad draftsmanship. It's also because of our lack of understanding of how it works. A lack of taking into consideration how the court is going to rule, how much discretion ang binibigay natin sa huwes, kung paano i-effect yan, paano i-implement yan ng ating mga pulis, paano i-interpret yan ng ating mga judges. Okay? So, just because, halimbawa, nakita natin yung batas, tapos meron na tayong nakikitang problema na ito, it doesn't mean na lahat ng batas ganun. Pero we have to organize it. At dito, tama kayo. Ang problema sa ating mga batas is most of the time, ayaw i-organize ng ating mga lawmakers. O gawa batas. Amyendahan yung mga previous batas, ganyan. Pero hindi nila nilalagay sa isang libro like a code. Tignan nyo yung tax laws natin. Dami yung tax laws. Pero tax lawyer lang nakakaintindi. Bakit? Alam nila kung saan nila hahanapin yung iba-ibang batas. Kasi minsan, may nakasingit na tax provision in a law about another thing entirely. Diba? So, may advantage yung mga tax lawyers. Plus, meron pang interpretations ng BIR, may mga opinions, revenue regulations, etc. So, the implementing agency carries the burden also of making this understandable. But they don't do that because it benefits a few people, nakakunti lang talaga yung nagiging nakakapag-specialize at nakakaalam ng lahat ng mga how all of these laws work together. Okay? So, the reason sinasagot ko yung ibang mga misconceptions is so that we put our energies into the things that we know we can change. Okay? Para mas madali. Kasi ang dami na ako, reklamo. Nakatutok tayo dun sa maling solusyon o dun sa solution that is far more difficult to implement. Yun ang sinasabi natin sa mga talang there are other solutions that we can already do right away. Diba? Halimbawa, gusto niyong patanggal yung party list, but in order to do that, you're going to have to amend the Constitution. Eh, paano natin amendahan ng Constitution? Sinubukan na nga ng Pangulo, nagawa na nga siya ng Constitutional Commission. Yung nangyari ba? Nabara ng Kongreso. So, kung pupukpukin natin ng pupukpukin, yung hindi naman magbabago sa kakapukpuk natin, tignan natin yung ibang mga solusyon. And that's why we're talking about the other solutions. That's why we're saying na, ano yung point in saying, pakawalan si General Palparan, for instance, nothing against the guy. Pero kung pag pinakawalan siya, hindi na po siya general. And dahil hindi na siya general at dahil hindi siya member ng Armed Forces of the Philippines, paano nyo sasagutin yung NPA problem by releasing him? Okay? Second, nagsasabi, pardon si Palparan. Paano ipapardon? Inapila niya yung kaso niya. Hindi po pwede bigyan ng pardon kung hindi pa tapos yung kaso. Mabibigyan lang ng pardon pag convicted by final judgment na yung tao. Hindi niya nga inaamin yung kasalanan niya eh. Hindi niya tinanggap yung conviction niya and therefore tumutuloy pa rin yung kaso niya. Kung under appeal yan, the President's hands are tied. Even if the President wanted to pardon him, then he cannot do that. Does Palparan want to be pardoned? Clearly he doesn't. Kasi if he wants to be pardoned, inurong na niya yung kanyang apila para mapardon siya. So somewhere along the way, yung mga solusyon na sinasuggest natin, hindi po naaayon dun sa facts involved. Now, balik tayo. Facts involved here, kabataan natin, how are we going to get them back? Most of the time, they have been so deeply ingrained into the program, what you have to do is deprogram them. At ito yung sinasabi ko, ang pagpasok kasi sa CPP, NPA, NDF, para kang pumasok sa kulto. At para matanggal yung pagko-convince sa kanila, you have to have counter or deprogramming measures. Yun yung ginagawa sa mga bata na nahikayat na pumasok dun sa mga kulto. Dini-deprogram po sila. Is that still possible pag matagal na sila doon? Sometimes you just have to leave them alone so that they will learn from their own mistakes. Wala tayong reach when the person is an adult. We cannot, even if we are parents, we cannot substitute their decision-making, their discretion for our own. Tapos na po yun pagka lumampas na ng 18 anyos. That is why, in the Anti-Terrorism Act, dito nag-work in the Anti-Terrorism Act, the mere act of recruitment into a terrorist organization is a crime. Okay, which brings us now to bakit hindi pa officially terrorist organization ang NPA. Eh, daming nagsasabi sa akin, alam naman natin lahat na terrorist organization sila. Alam naman natin lahat is not evidence. Okay? Sabi ni Ma'am Vivian Bayela, butas-butas ang batas and let the lawyers and justices do the rest to defend the law in court. No. Ikaw lang ang nagsasabing butas-butas. Kasi for you, it's a whole. For us, it's not. Okay? Not every law is drafted perfectly and we know how to work that out. You can't kasi make generalizations eh. Para sa akin, sabihin mo sa akin, anong batas yung may butas? At sasabihin ko sa iyo kung tama ka o hindi. Pero to make a generalization like that is not fair. It's not fair for the laws that were actually good, that are actually good. Putol-putol na ba yung signal ko? Chine-check ko, putol pa rin ba yung signal ko? Okay, clear daw. Sabi ni Julian Paulo Tolentino Fabros, to be honest kasi in UP, kapag defiant ka against the government in terms of your political views, ang lakas makatalino at makagiting. I don't know, taga-UP Diliman ka ba? Pero kasi for me, that's not true. It depends on the season, on the times. Nung panahon ni Marcos, wow, heroes namin, hindi ko hero si Lian, pero sina Elmer Mercado, yung mga student leaders, wow, bilib na bilib kami sa kanya. Kanila, okay. Lakas maka-arrive, kumbaga. Pero times change. Nawalan ng saysay. In fact, panahon pa ni Marcos, nasa UP na ako but I was a freshman in the dying years, okay? Ang tawag sa amin sa hindi sumasali sa mga rally nun, ang tawag sa amin, apathetic. Tapos parang laking insulto nun pag ikaw apathetic. Bakit hindi ka man lang interesado sa pangyayari dito sa bayan ninyo? Well, totoo din naman yun. Kasi, tatanungin ka ng professors mo sasabihin nila, munta ka ba dun sa libing ni Ninoy? Klase kami. Naman, 35 kami sa klase. Syempre, nung day na nilibing si Ninoy, lahat kami, ako, umattend ako, at least to see, kasi it was history happening. Isa kami ng prof ko, ikaw, munta ka ba? Yung isa sabi, hindi, proud pa siya. Ikaw, isang ka, pumasok ka ba o munta ka sa libing? Ma'am, pumasok ako. Ay, yabang pa ng mga kaklase ko pagdating sa akin. Absent ka ba o pumunta ka sa libing? Ma'am, pumunta ako sa libing. Okay, ikaw, uno ka for that day. Kayong mga pumasok dito, kung nagugunaw na yung mundo, nasusunog ng bayan ninyo, hindi man lang kayo lumabas para makialam. That's how it was. In the dying days of the Marcos years. Okay, bumalik ako ng UP College of Law na. Ano yung mga courses namin? There wasn't much anymore. Busy kami sa pag-aaral. So, minsan nagpo-protesta kami, pero doon lang kami sa building, hindi kami nalalayo sa library kasi doon kami nag-aaral. Pinoprotesta namin yung yung death penalty kay floor contemplation. Yung mga ganon. So, you can't also generalize what I can tell you is that because I'm currently enrolled, I can tell you what the temperature is in UP. Mainit talaga ang UP Student Council at saka yung mga traditional organizations na mahilig magprotesta. What about the rest of the organizations? Mas marami po kami. But of course, I'm a graduate student. Hindi ako undergrad at nakikilahok pa dun sa mga rally-rally nila. Pero, in general, a lot of us go to class. So, hindi rin and that's what we're saying. Generalization will defeat our own arguments against ourselves. Be careful when you generalize. Like generalizing that yung mga kids below 15 should be punished criminally. Now, naghahabol tayo sa kids who are over 18 saying they can't give consent to joining the CPP-NPA. Diba? Sabi ni Jonathan Seno, mahirap talaga pigilan ang mga nagre-recruit sa mga bata dahil magaling makiusap ang mga ito. sumasakay sa bugso ng damdamin. Yes, ito ang masasabi ko. Yung mga recruiters magagaling. Kasi psychologically, alam nila yung state of development ng bata. Alam nila na yung mga bata, one, they have time. May oras sila tumulong sa community organizing. Lalo na yung matatalino. Kasi yung matatalino, tsaka marunong mag-schedule, ganitong oras mag-aaral ako, ganitong oras pupunta ako sa ganyan. Ganitong oras punta ako sa community, makikisit in, makikiganyan. Makikigulo ko dito sa mga organisasyon. I have so many hours para makitambay. Di katulad namin na hindi disiplinado, hindi ako masyadong nag-aaral ng undergrad, panay tambay, panay landian lang ginagawa. Pero pumapasa. Okay, yun yung importante doon. Okay. Para dun sa nagsasabing putol-putol, I appreciate your comment, pero titigil po ako kapag lahat na po kayo nagre-reklamo nun. Kung isa-isa lang po kayo nagre-reklamo na putol-putol yung signal, wala po akong control dyan kasi it's not my signal anymore, it's yours. Sabi ni Josh Doctolero, if proven na yung mga party lists as supporters of CPP, NPA, NDF, may proseso pa ba ng impeachment o matik natatanggalin sila sa Kongreso? That's a very good question. When you say proven, what are you saying? Where is it proven? Okay? Kunwari, sa ano lang siya proven, sa Anti-Terrorism Council, hindi pa po automatic yon. The presumption is that they are still legitimate, pero yung declaration by the Anti-Terrorism Council means na pwede silang imbestigahan. This is a ground for asking for a warrant, for wiretaps, and all that. Okay, so put on notice ang taong bayan pag nag-associate ka. Kunwari, ako, textmate ko, let's say, member ng NPA. Kunwari lang, may ka-textmate ako na member ng NPA. Pagka dineclare sila ng ATC, di ko na siguro ita-text. Pwede ko may wiretap eh. Diba? Next. Saan napatunayan? Paano kung mag-file ng disqualification sa COMELEC? Yan, pwede yan tanggalin. File ko na rin, ang Gabriela daw, merong kaso ngayon sa COMELEC na pinatatanggal yung kanilang certification. So, yun, pwede, may proceedings dyan sa COMELEC. Sana makilahok ang AFP para matanggal yung accreditation ng grupo na yun. Well, in this case, it was Gabriela. Kung may ebidensya yan, and the evidence is only reasonable evidence ang kailangan kasi administrative proceeding ito, hindi ito criminal case, then yun, pwede sila matik yung tanggal after the declaration of after the revocation of their certification by the COMELEC. Okay, ngayon, paano kung proscribe? Ang proscribe, mag-file ang Anti-Terrorism Council doon sa Court of Appeals at hingin na declare na to judicially, which is called a proscription, ng grupo ng NPA na terrorist organization. Pag lumabas ang order ng Court of Appeals and this becomes final, matik yan. Ifa-file yan sa COMELEC for the revocation of their certification. And then walang choice. Ngayon, kung dun pa lang sa ATC, declared sila, ang pwedeng gawin is, lalong-lalo na pag na-identify, kahit hindi pa to na pumunta sa hukuman para i-try sila for violation of the anti-terrorism law. Declaration pa lang ng ATC, pwedeng mag-file ng administrative case sa Ethics Committee ng Kongreso. Ay, daming gumaganon. Which means, Mona Lisa treatment yan. Yun yung tawag ni Boss Jonat dun sa mga cases that they just lie there and they die there. So, kailan ba yung last time nagdisiplina ang Kongreso o ng Senado ng isang miyembro nila? Asa pa, di ba? Wala. Not recently. The last time was yung gun smuggler na kongresista. Sabi ni Kasuda Shono, is there any legal action possible na pwedeng magawa ang taong bayan for them to be removed from their congressional seats? Pagka party list kasi, yung individual member, mahirap tanggalin kasi yung partidong namimili kung sino yung uupo. Ang a-attack ninyo, yung party list organization itself. Yes, if you have evidence na yun, member sila ng CPP-NPA or yung organisasyon ay involved, let's say, sa droga, ganyan. or ano, yung organisasyon, nag-declare openly para sa NPA. Hindi enough po yung hindi nila sinasabi na hindi nila nire-renounce yung CPP, NPA, NDF, ha? Hindi yan magagamit as evidence, yung refusal, yung silence. Iba kasi yung tinatawag natin na res geste rule, na yung what they say or what they don't say doon sa pagbugso ng damdamin is evidence of the incident. Sabi ni Ma'am Ying, then it would be fastest na mag-file sa COMELEC than waiting for the NPAs to be declared terrorists. Yes, actually, that's the fastest. But you need evidence of that. You need evidence of the involvement, let's say, of the leadership. At dyan magiging significant si Ka Eric. Okay. Kung may personal knowledge itong si Ka Eric at it reaches the level of reasonable evidence sa pagsusuri ng mga COMELEC commissioners natin, then maaari pong matanggalan ng certification ang mga ito. See? Isn't that better than saying na tanggalin na natin lahat ng party list? O sige, pwede natin sabihin yan, pero you know what it takes, right? You have to change the constitution. So, kung yun ang hinahanap ninyong solusyon, ay good luck. We're going to have to live with them for a longer time. Ngayon, kung may ebidensya tayo para mapadisqualify natin itong mga to, remember, yung mga attempts to disqualify Duterte youth, ha? That can also work for them kung meron silang ginagawang kalokohan. Sabi ni Rico Bunagan, Rico, next time huwag kang mag-all caps. Babasahin ko lang ngayon kasi maganda yung tanong mo. Pabor po ba kayo na hearing ang case ni Ka Eric sa Kongreso at sa Senado? Qualified. Kasi take note dun sa sinabi din ni Ka Eric. Suspindihin nyo yung rules ng parliamentary procedure, tetestigo kami. Bakit? Bakit sinabi niya yan? Kasi once nandiyan ka sa Senado at sa Kongreso at tinetestigo mo, ang testigo mo laban dun sa mga miyembro nila na nakaupo doon mismo sa Kongreso, laban dun sa sitting congressman, ay good luck. Diba? Naalala niyo yung PhilHealth? Yung isang tao na, of course we don't like that person, or not, that we don't like, may ebidensya against that person, inakusahan niya yung isang kongresista. Diba? Yung kongresista na yun, nagdi-direct examination sa kanya. Doon mismo sa committee hearing. Paano ka mananalo sa ganun? Yung kongresista kalaban mo. Yung kongresista, pwede kang i-contempt ng mga kasamahan niya doon sa loob. And remember this, you can't even blame Speaker Lord Alan. Kasi ang kongresista, they band together. Kahit iba-ibang partido yan. Mag-attack ka ng isang kongresista, band together yan. Kasi you attack one, you can attack all of them. Okay? Hindi kailangan. Salamat Rico, nagsorry ka. Okay lang yan. Kasi pinapaalala ko lang. Sabi ni Maria Elsa Nadal Lloren, ano nangyari sa hearing investigations NPA recruitment at chaired by Senator Bato before? Wala nga. Wala na akong narinig ulit. Sabi ni Forward, kaya po maraming nare-recruit na kabataan dahil po hindi nila naabutan ang mga corrupt na presidente compared ni Duterte admin. In Duterte admin, wala silang immediate actual comparison. Pangalawa, may mga crush at jowa sila sa LFS or other student organizations. Hindi kami nila ma-force na sumali dahil nasa fraternity kami. Sa UP kasi yung ibang mga fraternities nag-align with certain political parties dun sa student council. So halimbawa, si Kiko, kandidato siya at kumandidato siya for University Student Council, di ba? So, yung fraternity niya was aligned with a particular party. Pero hindi yata siya sumunod. May issue siya na ganun eh. Sabi ni Thick Walls 5, kailangan po ba na Kailangan po ba ng magkaroon ng sex certification para makabuo ng party list or accreditation lang sa COMELEC? You need to have proof that you're duly organized. When you say duly organized, you're organized under the laws of the Republic. When you say you're duly organized under the laws of the Republic, incorporated po kayo. So proof that the organization exists outside of being a party list. Okay. After that, you will still get a certification from the COMELEC. Yung sa, kung i-hearing, tinatanong ni Nene Mick Carsos, kung i-hearing sa Kongreso, the speaker itself is involved. Hindi pa natin po alam yan. Alam naman natin na hindi miyembro si Speaker Lloyd ng leftist organization. Pero I will tell you this, any speaker would have done the way he had done it. Okay? Lahat yan ng mga kongresista, they'll band together. Bakit? Tingnan nyo, during the hearing sa PhilHealth, hindi nyo pa ba nakita? Kahit yung naalala nyo yung Dr. Mengita, inaakusahan niya yung isang kongresista. Yung kongresista, inaakusahan siya. Kasi sabi niya, ikaw, Dr. Mengita, pinapapatay mo ko. The congressman can say that. Pero nung si Dr. Mengita yung nagsasabi, ikaw, pinapakulong mo ko nang wala namang ebidensya. Siya yung kinontempt. Okay? Whether or not, it doesn't matter what side you've taken on that. Although I believe the congressman far more than I believe Dr. Mengita. My point is this, hindi kayo patas. Okay? Anybody from the outside, pagka kongresista ang inatake mo, walang patas-patas dan. They will be on the side of the congressman. Okay? Do you understand that? This is not about who the speaker is. This is not about who the chairman of the committee is. This is about congressmen banding together with other congressmen. And right now, the party list representatives are still congressmen. Sabi ni Teresa Barro, magaling po kayo na lawyer, pero hindi po ba mahirap para sa inyong mga lawyers na gamitin ang mga batas sa mga kasong hawak mo para po kasing kulang, ano po ba? Para lang po sa kaalaman. It depends po eh. Like I said para kayong nagtatanong sa akin kung gusto ko ng federal parliamentary. Ang dami-daming forms nun. Tanong mo sa akin, bigyan mo ako ng specifics. Mahirap ba? It depends. What are we fighting for? What is the alleged crime? What law are we talking about? What are the circumstances? Ano yung facts? Anong ginawa nitong taong to? Para masabi ko na mahirap in this particular case. In general, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Solidary obligation po pala ng Congress, sabi ni Ma'am Lolita de Vera. That's a joke, pero she's really very good at this. Sabi ni Iko Cayetano, walang butas ang batas, sabi nga ni Attorney Trixie, isang kwarto na may 5 abogado, may 7 na interpretations. Totoo yan. Why? Because we're trained. Okay? Ganito yan eh. Lawyers are trained to look for the other interpretation. They're trained to look for the comma, the conjunction, the single stray word that will protect your client or exonerate him or push his cause. Okay? It's possible that the law is airtight, but we will find something. If you're a really good lawyer, you will find something. What I cannot find is how we can get back kids who are over 18 back from the NPA when they are presumed to be adults and have already given their consent. Sabi ni John Caridel na totoo na dapat i-program. Masyadong malalim kasi ang brainwashing na nangyayari. Pero mahirap yon. For example, may nahuli ang kilala ko sa BJMP sa Mati ng mga NPA na confirmed students ng Big 4 sa UBEL. Ayaw magsalita, nag-aalok pa ng hunger strike. Ito yun. Maabot sila dun sa levels of fanaticism. Now, para sa akin, ganito lang yan pagdating din sa mga bata, bigyan natin sa kanila yung kalayaan talaga. You're free to choose. Pero tandaan mo to, understand what you are getting into. Pag ikaw, nahuli ka sa bundok, may hawak ka lang ng baril, illegal possession of firearms yan, at wala kang bail. Kaya mo ba? Sige, siguro kaya mo mamili ng buhay sa bundok, pero kaya mo bang mamili ng buhay sa loob ng kulungan ng 12 years? Kaya mo ba? Diba? Kasi once umakyat ka dun sa bundok, the presumption is that you are committing a crime. You are committing the act of rebellion. And then, pagka meron kang hawak na kontrabando, kasi may ibang mga NPA na involved sa drug dealing para mag-raise ng pondo. Pag ikaw, may hawak ka ng droga, bibenta mo para dun sa causes ninyo. Handa ka ba? Handa ka ba? No bail at habang buhay kang makukulong. Handa ka ba for that? Diba? Kasi hindi sinasabi sa kanila yon. And that's why what I'm saying here is that for them to make the right decisions, we have to tell them. At yun po yung value ng mga tulad ni Ka Eric at ni na General Parlade at ng NTF-ELCAC They are giving the alternative. They are the ones who are saying, handa ka ba? Sige, decision mo yan. Gusto mong umakyat ng bundok, decision mo yan. Pero alam mo ba ang mangyayari sa'yo? Meron tinatawag na programa. Ibibigay ka sa NPA commander. O whatever. Free sex. Ganyan. Handa ka ba? Most of the time, dala-dala pa nila ang marami sa mga kabataan natin, even in fact my classmates, umaakit na, umaabot na kami sa law school, pero yung utak nila parang high school pa rin. The same values, same decision-making processes, same everything, same level of maturity. Hindi nila, kumbaga, alam niyo yung marshmallow test, may mga kaklase ako in graduate school who would still fail the marshmallow test. Diba? Yung, sabi ni Maria Nelia Aray, rebellion is the same as terrorism. No. No. That's why there are two different laws for that. Right now, committing the act of rebellion pa lang sila. Pero once they commit acts of terrorism, halimbawa, may papatayin sila, may sinaktan sila, pero ang purpose nun is to cause widespread fear, that is terrorism. Pag pinatay mo for the purpose simply of, political assassination to. So you can actually have two crimes. Sabi ni Roger Marcelino, now that Ka-Eric manifested the infiltration of partisan representatives in the HOR, should Speaker Velasco take it into consideration to open a forum and diligently scrutinize the impact of such members and act accordingly on this matter? He has no obligation to do that unless another congressman asks it. Okay? Tandaan niyo yan. There's no obligation for them to review the actions of each of their colleagues. The only time they have the obligation to do that is when an ethics complaint is filed for the expulsion of members of the House. Now tell me, which congressman is willing to do that? Remember the complaint of Senator Gordon in the Senate against then Senator Trillanes. Tignan niyo kung ano nangyari doon. May nangyari ba? May grounds si Senator Gordon. May nangyari ba? Tell me, stop, yung para naman kayong mga bata yung ina-expect ninyo that Speaker Velasco will act against the interests of his own constituents. Why would we expect that? Sabi ni Ma'am Vilma Verona, totoo po yan, madami akong classmates from high school simply naging utak rebelde na po. Kalungkot kasi po, baliktad na sa ini-explain ninyo. Iyon na nga Diba? That's why in many instances, deep programming talagang kailangan. Or, you let them realize their mistakes. Yung problema nun, wala na silang kinabukasan minsan pagka na-realize nila. Tignan mo yung mga rebel returnees. Yung iba may mga asawa na, may anak na, may na matatanda na. O, mag-uumpisa ka pa ba ng career at that age? Uuwi ka. Babalik ka na sa syudad. Kahit nagpaalam ka, ayoko na, retire na ako, hindi ko na kaya magkapagbarilan. Ano pa ang kinabukasan nila nun? Kinabukasan ng mga anak nila. Sabi ni Rene Braga, baing ko matrace ba yung mga congressman na nagbibigay ng funds sa CPP, NPA? Depende Depende sa circumstances Kaya nga pinapabago ng Pangulo yung Anti-Money Laundering Act, diba? Sabi ni Roldan Ranoco, what's the best thing to do? The whole public to convince the three branches of government in changing the Constitution badly, aside from revolution. Ang hirap ng tanong mo. Alam mo, kahit ma-convince natin sila, we have made it very, very hard. It requires a constitutional convention or constituting the Congress, acting as a constituent assembly. Do you know how much money that takes? Meron meron dun sa People's Initiative, but it will still require a lot of money. So, yeah. Okay, medyo mahaba-haba na ito. Last two questions. Is there a possible link, sabi ni Rogie Season, between Legal Fronts and Liberal Party? I'm not sure. Hindi pa po kasi nababanggit yan That hasn't been discussed. Sabi ni Ma'am Ayun dito si Ma'am Isay. Hi. Uy, batiin niyo naman si Ma'am Isay. Mami ni AJ nakikinig po. Sabi ni Ma'am Isay, ang nakakatakot po baka mamatay sila sa bundok at wala nang chance para ma-realize yun. Totoo po yun. Yun po talaga ang problema natin. That's why that's why nga, di ba, napansin niyo, there was a time na pinapapasok, gusto natin pumasok ang military sa ating mga universities para makapag-conduct din sila ng sarili nilang information campaign. Alam niyo bang, binabara yon o tinatanggihan ng mga school authorities yan? Bakit? That means that the equation is not balanced. Itong mga nagsasabi na academic sila, what does it mean to have academic freedom? Ang academic freedom, ang interpretation lang is kung anong gustong ituro ng school, yun ang matuturo. Kung sinong gusto nilang ipasok sa school, yun ang ipapasok. Pero what about yung mga basic freedoms? What about the availability of information? Because learning isn't about saying na ito lang ang pwede mong aralin at wala nang iba. You will always have to give the other side. Yun nga yun po yung gusto natin ma-realize. The real education is giving them all the information and then allowing them to make informed decisions, because the decision is informed only if all of that information is available. Now, bakit hindi nakukuha lahat ng impormasyon? Well, among other things, tignan niyo yung internet natin. Ako pa talaga. Yung internet natin, it's expensive, it's not readily available, and even if libre dun sa mga schools, meron silang mga wifi, ang hirap-hirap kumonekta, ang hirap-hirap. You really can't share it all. One. Number two, academics, dahil sa academic freedom, they get to choose what you're going to learn. They get to choose your readings. It remains again up to the student kung ano yung babasahin nila outside of what has been prescribed by their professors. Diba? Most of the time, many of our educators fail because they fail in giving complete or at least balanced information. Pagka ang university ay skewed towards a particular political stand, asa pa tayo na makikita, maririnig ng ating mga anak yung impormasyon na yan. And it's no longer that. It is wrong to concentrate only on UP, ha? Dinidemonize ninyo yung UP. Si AJ, saan siya na-recruit? Okay? The reason naiinis ako na parating UP na lang ang tinitira ninyo, kasi you are ignoring the other schools kung saan sila nare-recruit. Stop that. Don't demonize a single school. Demonize the recruitment because it happens in all the universities. Be on your guard. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin, oh anak, hindi kita papapasukin sa UP. Papasukin kita dito sa isang university belt na school. Sige nga. Sa tingin ninyo, hindi nangyayari ang recruitment doon? The problem with making a sweeping generalization is we are defeating ourselves. Sabi ni Lisa Rowe, define marginalized sector please. Sana maging strict ang COMELEC sa pag-accept. Ito yung problema. COMELEC po ang nag-i-interpret niyan. Nakakaloka minsan yung interpretasyon. Seryoso it's very diverse. Kailan ba naging marginalized sector ang isang political party na pwede na ngayon maging miyembro ng party list, Abel? Diba? Yung mga nagsasabi, yes, I agree that ROTC is one of the good solutions. That's just one. Kailangan marami tayong solusyon. Kailangan meron tayong mga ibang mga organizations na kayang tapatan yung recruitment ng kabila. Kasi alam nyo, we need to make them feel that they can partake in something that is bigger than themselves. Sana may mga mga Red Cross din type na organization sa loob ng university. Diba? Yung mga ganon. Things that make it, mga rescue organizations, mga ganyan, yung mga nagtatanim, mga ganon. Environmental organizations, they're very few, but there are ones in school. Kaya lang kulang talaga yung hindi sila ganong kayaman kasi mas mayaman yung mga in-campus na tinatawag nating recruitment agencies. Kasi may pera sila eh. Isang yun. Last question. Sabi Kelvin, kahit sa mga barangay hall, nagpapaseminar, ano ba? Hindi ko nakita. Bilis. Nagpapaseminar yung mga red tag na party lists. O yon, ang sipag-sipag nila, ikot sila ng ikot. I think na, well, among other things, we can share yung mga live ng ibang mga vloggers na who talk about these things. Si TP and, sino pa ba? I don't know if Mark does live, pero yung Pugad Vloggers talks about it, lalo-lalo na pag si Fiscal Cañete, sina Attorney Berenguer, and all of that. Share this information. You don't have to shove it down their throats, kasi alam mo naman yung mga bata pag nasa rebelde stage sila, di ba? Kung ano yung bigay mo, ayaw nila yan, itago nyo. Itago ninyo, baka hanapin nila. Di ba? Okay. Yun, sabi ni Ian Pedro, I mean, movies about Philippine history, stories about Philippine folklore, oo, kailangan natin ng maraming ganyan. Kailangan pinupondohan natin ng mga cultural agencies natin na may pondo naman pero hindi naman nagagamit. Siguro dapat tinutulak din natin yung mga cultural agencies natin. Okay, so recap natin. Unang-una, si Ka Eric, credible ba siya? For me, he is credible because first, he qualifies as a witness because he has first-hand information and it is all personal knowledge. He sensed it with his own senses, saw it with his own eyes, heard it with his own ears. Second, he was part of the operations and therefore that makes him credible. He was also able to identify mga key personalities in allegedly legal front organizations. He was able to indicate yung mga operations nitong mga ito. He was even able to to expose some of the members as mas gusto pa nila yung nandito sa city, papasara, pero yung mga nire-recruit nila, binabato nila sa bundok para magsalo ng bala. Ganyan. Does yung mga kwento ba na siya ay si Jeffrey Celis, does this ruin his credibility? Hindi po, kasi meron naman siyang dahilan kung bakit gumamit siya ng cover story at saka cover alias at kung ano yung bahagi niya doon sa drug war. But even without that, it doesn't detract from his testimony. Hindi ko mo ba't later on na-involved ka sa droga, hindi ka na credible kasi at that time that you were talking about, nung nandun ka sa underground, nung ikaw ay NPA cadre, nandun ka. You are a witness because you personally witnessed all of these events. So credibility isn't about the person's character, but his ability to have sensed the events that are in question here. Okay? So para sa akin, credible si Ka Eric. Yung kanyang testimony is very significant dahil marami doon ay nakaka-identify siya ng mga problema ng mga tinatawag na front organizations na ito kasi they are now vulnerable to having their certifications revoked. Kung sila nga, or at least yung mga opisyal nila, are involved in the underground and therefore are committing a crime. Asa pa tayo dun sa ethics committee sa loob ng Kongreso, asa pa tayo sa mga ganyan. So, ano pa ba? How do we go after itong mga aktivista, mga anak natin, if they're over the age of 18? The problem is we can't. Once we recognize that they are adults, and the presumption is that they have made the decision of their own volition. As in fact, that's why it's hard. Okay? So, ang tina-target natin dito is the point of recruitment. Lalo-lalo na pag minor sila. Diyan pwede natin silang itigil. We have the ability as parents, for example, to pull our kids out of school if we think that that school is not doing enough to protect them. And we can complain about the schools. And we can complain about the party lists if they're involved in the recruitment of our kids. Okay? So, mga ganyan. We also have to recognize the good work na ginagawa ng ating mga AFP dito. Not just with coming up with Jeffrey Celis as a witness, but yung pagpa-participate nila sa propaganda. Yung argumento na bakit di sila nagpa-file ng kaso, that's not an argument. Kasi as the complainant, as the petitioner, tayo yung magko-control kung kailan tayo pwedeng magkaso. Pero there's nothing that stops them. And the possibility of filing a case later on is not a bar to the exercise of the freedom of expression. The other thing that we need to remember is that the laws regarding consent of our kids, they need to be organized and we need to come together to decide at what age do our kids get to exercise this kind of discretion? When do we consider them adults? But there are repercussions also in determining the age kung kailan yung consent ay buo na, adult na yung consent. Kasi kung hindi natin sila kung bibigyan natin sila ng power to, if we deprive them of the power of making consent at a certain age, then we also cannot jail them for certain crimes. Okay? Alam mo, para sa akin, kung taasan natin yung age of consent to 21, tapos yung mga crimes dito, pag namundok yung anak natin, one, we can get them back. We can still file petitions for habeas corpus, at least until 21. And two, we can exercise parental authority over them later on. Sumali. 19 years old, sumali dun sa organisasyon. Not only can I go after them, but I can say, she did not give the kind of consent that, the kind of informed consent that is required for joining this sort of organization. Ha-attack. Okay? Also, kung at 21, yung age of consent, if you commit a crime before that, then juvenile delinquent ka, hindi pa masisira yung kinabukasan mo, wala ka pang criminal record kung isiseal natin yung mga records nila. Okay? So, this is just one possibility. Don't take it as gospel truth. We can still come up with more and more and more solutions. We just have to keep discussing this. And we also have to be discussions informed. Okay? So, pag humingi tayo, pag nag-adject tayo for certain changes, understand that the changes must be realistic and must be practical. Okay? Maraming salamat sa pagsubaybay sa Luminous. Munti ko na sabihin karambola. Sa Luminous ngayong araw na ito, maraming salamat din sa mga very intelligent na input ninyo, kasi without your input, hindi makabuluhan yung mga discussion dito eh. Maraming salamat ulit. Don't forget to like and share, and please don't forget to follow dito sa Luminous. Yay! Hindi tayo naputulan today. Maraming salamat. Pakibati naman everybody. Kamustahin niyo parati si Ma'am Isay, mami ni AJ. She's still fighting the good fight. At siya po ay instrumental, tumutulong siya talaga sa government forces sa atin dito sa para puksain ang CPP, NPA, NDF. Maraming salamat sa inyo, Ma'am Isay.